You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinezic.
Welcome back to The Buzz, brought to you by the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
And I'm Tom Kinezic, and welcome to episode The Area Code of Manitoba. So that is 204. This is one of 3 area codes for the province of Manitoba, including 431 and 584. So we got a while until we get back there. But yeah, I figured we're probably in that range where we missed the New Jersey, 201's in New Jersey area code.
I wonder if they have a cool hand signal like the 303. You know the 303 hand signal does?
No, I didn't know. Yeah, what area code is 303?
It's I think it's Denver, Colorado. Yeah. But
okay.
I made one for 609.
Well, that sounds
where we're at.
Yeah.
So
you really gotta
That's a good hand signal.
It looks a little risque. I think if you went on a cruise and gave that hand signal, you might have some people approaching you in pineapple Hawaiian shirts. Anyway, we got an episode chock full of excitement and native plants and all kinds of stuff. But
we do.
There's also something important that we need to do.
And what's that?
First and last, because we have 2, right?
We do have 2.
So we do one in the beginning,
yes,
and then one in the end, so people have to listen.
So the secret will be the second giveaway. So we're going to give away one book. I still have them right here.
We have 2 signed copies of Earth and Soul by Leah Rampey.
Beautifully signed, waiting to be given away. As I stand on my cord and almost rip. This is going to be a fun one. I almost just ripped my headphones off my head.
Oh, yeah. We got a lot planned. So, with that, let me turn my sound up so people can hear this. And where'd my wheel go? Where'd the wheel go?
This is all the people that have given 5-star reviews on Apple. They've left comments on Podbean. They've left reviews on Amazon. They've left comments on YouTube. And I'm trying to think, what else am I missing? Is there anything else?
I don't recall.
I think there is, but...
Yeah. But
if you've done the things that we've asked...
I've scoured the interwebs, and I've...
Oh, and you've left a comment on Spotify.
Yes.
That's it.
Yep. So, yeah.
If you've done one of those things, or all of them, like our friend Santino...
Mm-hmm.
You're entered.
You got a chance.
You got a chance. So, all right.
Yeah, and there's some of these folks that I know, or I figured out who they are, and there's others that they have very interesting usernames. Yes. So, without any further ado, my sound is turned on. Okay, ready?
Yes,
set,
go.
All right.
All right. Do you recognize the?
I have no idea.
All right.
The winner of the first book is J or AH space SH space J. I have no clue where the review is. I'm going to guess that's an Apple one. If I was smart in retrospect, I could have put a little dash and then where the review was from. That would have been a lot more work for me. AH space SH space J. So if that is your username, or you suspect that may be your username, prove it and send us a message.
What other people have done is logged into where they left a comment or review and took a screenshot so that we could see that it was them who did it. So,
and you also have 2 weeks to claim your. Do we 2 weeks or 4 weeks?
We did 2 weeks. So by the time we record
Buzz,
episode
if we don't
206,
record. Yeah, by the time we record that, you have to have messaged us so we can work out where this thing is shipping to. And if not, then we spin the wheel again. One of my favorite things to do. I do this in my spare time at home.
I
just spin the wheel. See, this person would have run a book.
I'm doing a very quick look through Apple to see.
They're not even in order because I've randomized it so many times.
Yeah, I was going to say there's so many 5-star reviews. It could take me a very long time to do this. Yeah. Oh no, there it is. I found there.
Okay.
It's on Apple Podcasts. The review, it says Rancher Hunter Conserve. Why can't I pronounce this? Conservish.
Conservation?
Conservationist.
Wow.
I'm having a good rancher, hunter, conservationist. Thank you for offering a well-rounded, fun to listen to podcast. This is a well-balanced podcast that a habitat manager can use for information with a utilitarian point of view.
Awesome.
So that's a great review, and thank you so much. And if you reach out to us, the best way to reach out to us is via email at info@nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. I'll repeat that. info@nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. Also, if you had called in and left a message on our thing, you were entered into the contest as well. That was the other way. So first book given away. Hopefully you reach out to us. You have 2 weeks, maybe a little less, before we air or record episode 206, which is probably 2 weeks from today. And claim your book. All right. What else do you want to talk about?
Well, a little catching up.
Yes.
I mentioned many weeks ago about our prickly pear here and how it was looking worse for wear.
Yeah, it really was.
Since then, I wouldn't say it looks, well, it kind of looks better. It doesn't look worse.
It's still in the same spot.
Still in the same spot. It has not moved.
My laptop is kind of blocking most of it, but what I see coming above my laptop is fresh new growth.
Yes, new growth. I'm
or a flower bud?
I think those are the flowers.
I think they're.
I think it's about the flower in here.
I do too, and I see a lot more coming.
There's a lot, and I'm questioning whether I should move it or just make it a staple. The pot is super dry, but it's a plant that likes to be dry. There's some
and right now
that are desiccated, but
we're still getting some cold temperatures at night. Like we're hitting like the high 30s.
But what's interesting to me is some of the I'm calling them palms. I don't know what they're actually called. That were like super wrinkly before are not as wrinkly as they once were. So it likes it here.
It's happy.
It's my friend.
Yes.
It hangs out with me.
It's always there. Yeah. It's a good friend.
So eventually it'll go somewhere in my yard, but it's been doing way better than I expected in here. I kept forgetting about it, and I'm like, I'm gonna plant this. I just got to figure out where to plant it. I don't want to plant around my pool because then you got kids running around. That's not what you want there, as evidenced by someone else who wrote in at one point. So I didn't know where to plant it, and then all of a sudden I started seeing the little growths off of it. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should leave it here.
Yeah, no, it's looking good.
Yeah,
it's looking It's mostly looking good.
Yeah. So, and then last thing that we're going to talk about is we are recording on Thursday, April 4th. You're going to hear this when it comes out, it'll be Friday, April 5th. And in a few short days, there's going to be an eclipse. And I'm not an eclipse chaser.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you know how the man on the moon cuts his hair?
I do not.
Eclipse it.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, that's a good one.
There, that's all I got. That's my contribution for this episode.
Yeah,
sorry.
Well, there's an eclipse. I'm not an eclipse chaser by any means, but as it's gotten closer, I'm like, oh man, maybe I should be. So I'm jealous of folks like Brad Mandrinsky, who we're going to bring up later as well, who lives in Buffalo, where is like the path of totality, the center of it is right over or near where he lives. I don't know exactly where he lives, but probably close by.
Yeah. So he's in the area where he's going to get a full on glimpse.
I know there's some folks in who listen in Texas and all along the route. In fact, I saw something last night. It was like Airbnb occupancy rates for the 8th or the 7th and the 8th, and it's like a red meant that they were like fully booked in the area, or like 90% plus booked in the area, and then blue meant like the shades of blue meant something different. And it is literally like a perfect path of that line of totality is bright red. It's just all of them are booked and nothing's available.
Now you just mentioned to us the other day that you were planning a eclipse party.
We're going to have an eclipse party here at the nursery. I think we're going to be like 85% ish covered, maybe plus or 5%.
Pretty cool.
We have the place in New York. My parents are going up there, and lately I've been like, oh, maybe I should go up there too. This sounds pretty, like, way cooler than I was expecting.
Because you were saying the next one's in the 2040s.
The next one
at least
that's going
to
be
away.
In the continental U.S. is like 2044. So 20 years. Fran,
I may or may not be here.
But you have, I think that's in like North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana. So if you want to see it, you got to go out
gotta
there.
go there.
Like this is the first one I think in a while where it's spanned the majority of the country. And then there's another one, like I think the next one that's going to be in this area, like the Northeast, is like 2093.
Wow.
So I won't be here for that.
I
one.
won't be here for that
highly doubtful.
I
It'll be
remember
104.
like making in elementary school, there was an eclipse, and we were making eclipse viewers
Yeah.
out of like
Little pinhole things, right?
It was like a paper towel,
Yeah.
like the middle. I don't remember how we did it, but
Yep.
yeah.
So so if you're in that path of totality and you want to, I don't know how you take pictures of it. Can you take pictures of it?
Well, if you're
Share your experiences.
if you're, I don't know how it would. I wonder if you could put like a pair of glasses over the lens of your camera,
Maybe.
of your phone. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like your phone lens, and take it through that.
Yeah,
I would
it's,
imagine you'd be able to do that.
Yeah. No, I don't know how it works.
I don't know either.
You can probably find out on the internet. So do that. But I'm getting jealous because we're not going to get the full thing. But we're going to have a little eclipse party here at the nursery.
Very cool.
With sun chips and moon pies. More than likely, I haven't decided. The other alternative I saw someone suggested is you get extra large pizzas and then cover everything but the crust in black olives. And then it's like, but I don't know.
I don't think I'd eat
who's
that.
an out black olive lover. So
I love pizza. I don't know that I'm eating.
no beer for us, no Corona or Blue Moon.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh
Eclipse,
well.
kind of neat.
Yeah, it's.
I'm getting FOMO. I guess is how I feel. It's like, oh, maybe I should be paying more attention to this because people are really like riled up about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have like I know I mentioned to you I was in the local Lowe's picking up some stuff to do a repair in the house, and they had pallets worth of Eclipse glasses by the front register, like 2 pallets full. So I've noticed people on social media mentioning that they have their glasses. Like,
Yeah.
it's a big, I guess I should be more excited.
Yeah. It's interesting because I find there's a lot of people who are like incredibly pumped about it.
Yeah.
And then others who are like, okay. From what I've read, it's really powerful when you're in that path of totality because it almost like it gets dark enough you can see the stars for a minute or two,
cool. Yeah.
which is just different. So, and I imagine back to when like, before we kind of knew this stuff was happening, like, what the heck did you think was going on when that happened? Like, 10,000 years ago, and you're like,
and all of a sudden,
I'm trying to think of the people, like the series of people that were alive then.
how many people went blind from staring at it, going, "What is that?"
Yeah, but it's like, what did you think was going on? Like, it makes you like, well, you think of otherworldly things immediately. So,
Oh, definitely.
and then one of my favorite stories is with Tecumseh and the Shawnee, and when I guess this is Indiana, Ohio, and they were trying to like have manifest destiny, people moving west, and he rallied a lot of the Native American tribes to fight back together instead of individually, and the president at the time challenged him and his brother, who's referred to as the prophet, that if he was really a prophet, like have like God show a sign where it's like make the sun go dark or like do something with the moon or make the river stop still. And then he came out and said, 50 days from the prophet did.
Yeah.
It was like 50 days from now, our Lord or whatever, I can't remember, the deity they were talking to said is going to block out the sun to show their strength and all that. And what they're thinking back on now is Tecumseh, through his travels, somehow found out this was going to happen.
Yes.
And then told his brother, saying, "Hey, say this is going to happen." and then all these people, because it was really I think it was Harrison was the president, did it as a sign to to discredit them.
Yeah.
And doing this, even though maybe it wasn't the like as much of a prophecy as a kind of, I knew this was going to happen and I'm saying it and it makes me look better kind of thing. But it gathered the support of those tribes and like rallied them around Tecumseh to keep fighting. So if you want more information about Tecumseh, I'd look into, there's a 3-part series on him that the Bear Grease podcast did.
Okay.
This guy Clay Newcomb out of Arkansas, and like really, really good. So, and that was over a year ago now. So you can listen to all 3 sequentially instead of me, where I had to wait like a month and a half to finish all of them. But really interesting who he was, and tells about that story as well.
Awesome. So, very cool.
Eclipse. Looking forward to it. All right, plant time. What do you have that you like this week, Fran?
So I was thinking pussy willow. Salix discolor, just because it's one of those things that kind of, to me, is one of those first signs of spring. So Salix discolor, and Salix being one of Doug Tallamy's top 5 Lepidoptera hosts in this area in the Northeast. It's a small tree or a multi-stem small shrub, or large shrub, I should say, reaching about 20 foot tall. It's native from Maine to northern Delaware. I didn't realize until I looked that it was more of a northern species. To northern Delaware, west of Montana, commonly found in poorly drained soils with a close to neutral pH. It's fast-growing and short-lived with dark gray scaly bark. Large flower buds burst and expose their soft silky hair early in the year before leaf emergence. Some twigs will produce beautiful golden stamens, while others bear slender greenish pistils. It's an early season harvest for songbirds, waterfowl, and small mammals, and the male flowers provide pollen for bees. There's a lot of Salix specialist bees, and it's hugely popular larval host supporting Arcadian hairstreak, black-waved flannel moth, Cercopia moth, just to name a few. And it's a great cut. Like if you cut it before the flowers completely
really
come
open,
out, they'll stay, and you don't put them in water. You keep them dry, they'll stay like that. Or you can put them in water
for a long time. Too.
Yeah,
so.
They're very long lasting. Now, as a kid, that was one of the jobs you did at the nursery, right? Did you? Because there was a stock block of pussy willow, and I think you
I used to
and your
cut
brother,
And I know we used to cut them, and we used to bring them to church. I'm trying to think of what else we did with them.
Did you go to local florists? I thought I remembered your dad.
I don't remember. Maybe we cut him and he went, but I never did.
All right.
I always said the first thing I ever grew was a pussy willow because I filled the pot with sand and I grabbed a stick I found on the ground and put it in there. And then there was a high school kid who was working at the nursery at the time who helped me. Yeah. And we found a spot in a greenhouse to do it. And I went back and checked, and it had grown. And I might have been like 4 at the time. In retrospect, I think they switched it out on me. And I did not actually just pick up it. Because I'm like, where I picked up the stick from, there's no pussy willows near there. And it was like a dead branch. It was not a cutting that I would have.
The whole thing is a lie.
Remember. So I think they pulled the wool out over my eyes. And,
it's a lie.
Yeah. But for realistically, up until maybe a year or 2 ago, I actually believed that I had grown this, and then I started thinking about it. I'm like, this doesn't even make any sense. I totally did. I remember what the stick looked like, and it was not what a pussy willow stem looks like.
That's funny.
So yeah,
that was a good. You know what? Think about it though. Like how long you believed.
Oh yeah,
that's a good. Yeah. That was a nice trick.
Yeah. Moral of the story: lie to your kids. Yeah. It's good for them. All right.
What is your plant?
My plant this week is not something that's blooming right now, but it's also thematic, and that is the common sunflower. It's a widely branching stout annual, Helianthus annuus. 2 N's, 2 U's, and that don't screw that one up.
All right.
It is a tall stout annual, which can be 1.5 foot to 10 feet tall. With coarsely haired leaves and stems, the terminal flower heads are large and showy, up to 5 inches across. A tall, coarse, leafy plant with a hairy stem commonly branched in the upper half and bearing several of the many flower heads. The central maroon disc is surrounded by many bright yellow rays. State flower of Kansas, and contrary to many common myth, the heads of the sunflowers do not follow the sun each day. However, developing flower buds and leaves do exhibit some phototrophism. The plant has been cultivated in central North America since pre-Columbian times. Yellow dye obtained from the flowers and a black or blue or dull blue dye can be obtained from the seeds, which were once important to Native American basketry and weaving. Native Americans also ground the seeds for flour and used its oil for cooking and dressing hair. It was believed in the 19th century that plants growing near a home would protect from malaria, and the seeds from cultivated strains are now used for cooking oil and livestock feed in the United States and Eurasia. This plant is native basically to every state west of the Mississippi, but it's a sunflower, guys. You're going to see them everywhere. Of course, there are cultivated varieties of that now, but it's all derived from a native plant. And it's
that I'm allergic to.
It's one of the few native. Well, I don't want to really box myself in here. In New Jersey, or on the East Coast, some of the few native plants that are used as commercial crops are blueberries, cranberries. Fran, you know the last one?
Peaches?
Grapes.
Grapes, really?
Concord grapes are native to the Northeast. So, peaches, I think, are
they're not native here.
Japanese, Chinese thing.
I was going to say, they're not native here. I was just throwing that out there because I had no idea.
But in other parts of the
grapes,
country,
really?
Other parts of the country, well, you have wild grapevine, and that's basically
that's
Concord,
true.
I think, is a variety of that. So, so that's another native plant that's used in commercial agriculture.
That's pretty cool.
So,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you I'm allergic to sunflower seeds?
Well, I assumed. You're allergic to so many things, friend.
There's, when I was a kid, they thought it was hay fever, or because it only ever happened when I went to the Little League baseball field, which had tons of unmowed fields.
Yeah.
So they assumed it was that, but every time I was at the baseball field, I was eating sunflower seeds.
Yeah.
So my eyes would swell shut, and they're thinking, oh, the hay fever's so bad, you can't go there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that they figured out it was sunflower seeds.
Interesting.
The doctor's like, you're allergic to sunflower seeds. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm like, I've been eating them my whole life. He goes, well, I'd stop if I were you because you're pretty allergic. Very cool. So 2 great plants. Obviously, I would imagine most people are familiar with both as far as cut plants go. So if you have the opportunity to put either of them in your yard, they would make a great addition that you can also use for cut flowers to take in the house. It's 2 for 1. So if you have the opportunity, use them. And I think that's about it. So you ready for the results of this or that?
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not sure if I actually updated it.
I changed them for you.
Did you? Thank you. Yeah, I realize that every week I'm like, oh, I didn't update that. So last buzz, my article was on the Virginia's invasive plant plan for labeling invasives. Tom's was on New York City's clean water. And we have a winner, and it was me, 7-5. Yeah. Not a lot of votes.
Not a lot of votes.
Not a lot of votes. It was actually 6-5 up until I gave it a bump a little bit ago, and I got one more vote. Not a whole lot of votes, but I am going to. What do I typically do?
You typically go first.
I'm going to let you go first.
All right. One of the things I'm noticing is we have articles from the same source. We both got our articles from Audubon.org, which is for the Audubon Society.
Very interesting.
Mine is also thematic, and it's titled "A Total Solar Eclipse is Coming. How will birds and other wildlife react?"
Ooh, I'm interested in that. Because you were saying, how did people 10,000 years ago react? Well, how did
exactly? Yeah.
I'm curious to hear about this.
It's a bit long, so shut me down when I get boring.
Read the whole thing.
All right, so. Where do I want to start? All right. I'm going to start right now.
All right.
On April 8th, the moon will cross between the Earth and the sun, turning daylight into darkness across a long slice of North America, starting in Mexico, making its way from Texas to up toward Maine, and finally popping out through Canada. Even for humans who don't know what's in store, the experience of a total solar eclipse is shocking. The power of the eclipse is its strangeness, says Doug Duncan, an astronomer at the University of Colorado who's chased eclipses across the globe. There are things that happen during a total eclipse that never happen any other time in your life. But birds and other animals have no idea what's coming, and they can react in unusual ways when everything suddenly turns dark and cold. Over the decades, eclipse watchers have noticed some curious animal behavior during totality, the peak period where the moon moves fully in front of the sun, like purple martins pausing their foraging and nighthawks flying in the afternoon. On his own total eclipse journeys, Duncan has witnessed everything from llamas gathering in Bolivia to whales and dolphins surfacing in the Galapagos. I think I'd heard something else about. This is a little side about turtles in the Galapagos doing something else when the eclipse passes through totality.
They know how to party.
It's their time to shine. Because eclipses are brief and uncommon, though, studies on these wildlife reactions can be tricky to coordinate. The window of totality for the April eclipse maxes out at around 4.5 minutes, and after this year's event, the contiguous U.S. won't see another until 2044. Still, researchers have been trying to make the most out of the narrow window, especially with the rare doubleheader of total solar eclipses crossing North America in recent years. In 2017, another total solar eclipse crossed the United States from coast to coast, giving scientists a chance to study how animals responded across the path of totality. And this year, more projects are set up to add to the growing body of evidence. Here's what to know about the science behind wildlife and eclipses and how you can be part of this in April, which is now. What the last eclipse revealed: when a total eclipse crossed over New England in 1932, researchers put out a call for people to share their wildlife observations. In their paper, probably the first to study to intentionally track animals during the eclipse, people reported owls hooting, pigeons returning to roost, and a general pattern of bird behavior that suggested fear, bewilderment, or belief that night was approaching. Nearly a century later, a slew of projects in 2017 also turned to the community scientists to help understand these wildlife responses. With the eclipse crossing the country from the west coast to the east and the millions of people in its path, we essentially had the ability to collect a lot of data, says Allison Young of the California Academy of Sciences. More than 600 observers submitted their findings to iNaturalist that year, and part of the Life Responds, a community science effort that Young helped organize. Many of their observations described an absence of wildlife during the eclipse peak, she notes, but busy bird feeders clearing out, insects going quiet, flowers closing up. Young proved her own dedication to the project, making sure to snap photos of a nearby ant colony during totality, even as her boyfriend was using the moment to propose to her. Shows how driven she is.
Yeah.
Other community scientists that year also noted bees quieting their buzzing into flower patches, zoo animals going through their nighttime routines, and chimney swifts swooping and twittering like it was dusk. Some researchers decided to take more of a bird's eye view. A team from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology used radar data to see what flying animals got up to during the 2017 eclipse. They looked at observations from a weather radar station network run by the National Weather Service, which collects data about what's happening in and around in the air around the clock, including the clouds of insects and birds that zip around the skies. The researchers wanted to know, how are things that are normally tracking the air going to react to this very special event? Says Cecilia Nielsen, a behavioral ecologist at London University. At least for birds, it's probably a once-in-a-lifetime experience. The resulting study found that as the moon started to cover up the sun, there was a drop in biological activity in the air, suggesting that day-flying birds and insects were coming down to rest, says Andrew Farnsworth, migration researcher at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, who worked on the study. But the fake dusk wasn't enough to fool everyone. The radar didn't show a spike in activity that usually happens after dark when night flyers take off. The daytime activity is declining, Farnsworth said, but it's not powerful enough stimulus to create what typically happens at sunset in terms of emergence of lots of other nocturnal insects, the exodus of birds migrating at night. And what 2024 can teach us, this year is set to keep building our knowledge. Many researchers have plans to repeat and refine their projects from 2017. Farnsworth and his team are excited to see what the radar has in store this time around, and Young is once again organizing an iNaturalist hub where people can submit their photos and observations. The 2024 eclipse has some extra advantages for research. Experts point out the maximum length of totality is almost twice as long as in 2017, meaning there's more time for animals to respond and more time for humans to observe them, Young said. Plus, the April timeframe is closer to peak spring migration, which could mean more birds are motivated to take off when the skies get dark, Farnsworth said. This year, another major project will aim to understand what animals are doing during the eclipse by eavesdropping on them. The NASA-backed Eclipse Soundscape project plans to gather audio recordings and observations from across the path of totality after working on some smaller-scale efforts during the prior eclipse. The team has already sent out hundreds of audio kits to volunteers around the country, and it has instructions for everyone who wants to build their own, says Henry Trey Winter, one of the project's principal investigators. These community scientists will help place the recorders in locations in and around the path of totality, from backyards to wildlife refuges, and run them before, during, and after the eclipse, 5 days in total, to capture the shifting sounds of nature. Once volunteers mail their memory cards back in, the Soundscapes team will plan to specifically look at the response of crickets, which have been known to start their chirping when the darkness of the eclipse takes over. Winter recalls a friend describing how in 2017 the start of totality sounded like somebody turning on a cricket switch, but all of the eclipse recordings will also be shared publicly, so other scientists can design their own studies using the massive amount of data collected, Winter says. We can build this living database that will go on to be used by generations. With all the research planned, scientists are hoping to get some concrete evidence behind centuries of anecdotes about wildlife and eclipses. We have a pretty good idea of what might generally occur, says Brent Pease, an ecologist at Southern Illinois University, whose lab is partnering on the Eclipse Soundscapes project. And here's an opportunity for everyone, for us to quantify that. Even though we don't see eclipses very often, understanding these wildlife reactions could also help give us insight about broader questions in ecology, Farnsworth said, like how shifts in light and temperatures act as cues in different behaviors in nature. Really, the connection we're thinking about here is how animals relate and respond to their environments, he said. Last little section here is how can you observe? If you don't live along the path of totality and are able to travel, Eclipse pros say it's worth making the trek. Even the slightest bit of sunlight that can get around the moon makes a huge amount of difference, Winter says, which means being in the total eclipse path is vastly different experience than even the 99% coverage. For Duncan, April will mark his 12th time seeing a total solar eclipse. Totality means the chance to see more interesting animal behavior, he says, along with all the other wonderful stuff, the silver streamers of the sun's corona stretching across the sky, and the pink flames and the people screaming and crying. Even in the partial zone, though, you can still pay attention to how nature responds and contribute to science. Sending your observations through a platform like iNaturalist or eBird can help provide valuable data for future research. And Young says reports from outside the path of totality can still reveal interesting insights about what level of sun coverage is needed for animals to react. The Eclipse Soundscapes project is looking for observers to record and share field notes of the changes they hear and feel during the eclipse, whether they're in the total path or not. By going beyond the visuals, the Soundscape team hopes to make the big day more accessible for blind or low vision people who are often left out of astronomy. Winter says, and to help everyone have a deeper experience of the rare event. What we're trying to do is have people be very mindful during the eclipse and actually use all their senses to determine what changes, Winter says. Pay attention to any animals around you, whether in natural space or nearby bird feeder, researchers suggest. Take the time before and after the eclipse to notice any changes in how many animals are around and how they're acting. Of course, you should also save some time to take in the big event. Even though we humans can understand when and why the eclipse is going to happen, it's hard to fully be prepared for the true experience of totality, something that sure looks like the end of the world, Duncan says. When you're standing there and something is just taking the sun away, he says, you can't deny it. Which is why I'm like, oh, maybe I should go up there. But I think the traffic is going to be nuts. I'm pretty sure.
I would imagine. I'm excited to find out the results of this research. I'm assuming it's going to take some while for them to wade through all the information that they're gathering, but it's something I never really thought about.
Yeah, it's
because it's not something that happens that often.
Exactly, and for us, like we had the one in 2017. I think there was another shorter one near us in 2019. Yeah. But prior to that, it was like 1979, and then before that, like it's another 20, 30 years. So it's not across someone's lifetime. You might have 4 of these events, or 5 of these events.
Like you said, the 70. That's the one I remember from elementary school. Like I was 8, turning 9. So that's how long ago it was.
So it's it is a pretty unique event, and it's interesting knowing about it and like having the internet so you can look at pictures of this and kind of see what's coming. Like, that you're in the path of totality where a few, like 100 years ago or 200 years ago, we knew it was coming, but going back like 5 or 1,000 years ago or more, that's when the science had not really been there yet for a lot of this stuff. So just imagining being alive then and what this experience must have been like is
I can't even imagine.
And just but it's interesting seeing how there are animal reactions. I really wanted to find something if there were plant reactions, which this touches on, saying that some of the flowers that close up with the night will actually do that, but we don't have a lot blooming here right now.
No.
But that'll be interesting to see what happens in Texas and Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas when it's going across.
Very true.
Some places like, where their spring has already opened up. So
very, very cool.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to think, like I think Tradescantia does that.
Yes,
like Spiderwort and Sundrops, like that kind of thing.
Big thing here that I really wanted to hit on is we have so many great tools like eBird and iNaturalist that are so easy to use. If you're able to contribute to this, it's going to benefit, even though it might be a small observation to you or you're making 1 or 2 observations. The cumulative of that is invaluable to researchers as they're doing things. So
I mean, we always say like for the greater good in native plants, if everyone just had one or two, it'd be great. So if everyone gave one or two observations, imagine the amount of observations.
Exactly.
It'd be wonderful. So awesome. That's a fantastic article. So mine, as you mentioned, is also from Audubon.org. And mine is called New Laws Protect Bird-Friendly Yards from Neighborhood Rules. This is written by Zoe Gruskin. Even as her yard blossomed with black-eyed Susans and milkweed, Melinda Solstice didn't consider herself a gardener. She just wanted to see more wildlife. After learning how native vegetation improves habitat for the animals she hoped to attract, Solstice grew a haven for birds and butterflies in her front yard. As soon as you start researching, she says, you realize it's all about the plants. But hers is among the growing number of American households that belong to a homeowners association, HOA. U.S. Census Bureau data shows that 84% of new single-family homes sold in 2022 belong to one of these private entities that collect fees from residents in exchange for services like trash pickup and snow removal. Associations also set rules for what members can do with their property, and in June 2021, Solstice received a letter. The flourishing native species she's lovingly grown broke the restriction against weeds. She would have to rip them out. Solstice decided to push back. She tidied up her plantings, but she also partnered with regional environmental nonprofits to help introduce a bill in the Virginia legislature to protect the right to grow native plants in HOA communities. Solstice was inspired by first-in-the-nation legislation passed in nearby Maryland in 2021, born of a like-minded couple's years-long and costly legal battle with their own HOA, that now serves as a template for other states. Last year, Maine enacted a similar bill, and Minnesota went a step further, requiring not just HOAs, but all municipalities to allow natural landscaping. The idea behind these HOA rules, which often mandate pristinely mowed grass lawns, is to protect property values, but some evidence suggests they may not achieve that goal. Still, even though enthusiasm for ecologically vibrant yards is growing, many people see native plants as messy, says Andrew Tufts, manager of Maine's Audubon's Bringing Nature Home program, who testified in support of that state's bill. He hopes the new law will shift that perception by making bird-friendly yards more commonplace, and notes that they need not buck convention when it comes to appearance. You can insert native plants into existing design aesthetics, often quite seamlessly. But even when blending in, native flora excel where conventional lawns and exotic plants fall short, creating healthy and much-needed habitat for local insects, birds, and other animals. Drawing these species right to people's homes is the best way to change minds about native plants, says Renee Grebe, Northern Virginia conservation advocate at the nonprofit Nature Forward, who worked with Solstice to shape and promote the Virginia bill. When you see the magic that unlocks everything, Grebe says. There's a practical argument, too, says Marlene Panton, partnerships manager of Audubon's Plants for Birds program. Homeowners and HOAs can save money with native plants, which often require less maintenance than lawns and ornamentals. Some residents have found their HOAs eager to embrace the idea, particularly in drought-prone states like California and Arizona, since native plants can reduce water use and wildlife risk. In one Arkansas community, what could have become a conflict with Property Owners Association instead led to a fruitful collaboration, says Norma Wall, president of Hot Springs Village Audubon Society. By offering their knowledge of local ecology as a resource to the association leadership, Wall says chapter members have been successful in several initiatives to support birds and other wildlife, including persuading the board to declare the week of Earth Day Native Plant Week in the community. The fact that they can rely on us as an ally and vice versa has been the only way that we can make this thing work, Wall says. The new laws won't let HOA members do whatever they want with their property. They call for managed natural landscapes. In most cases, landscaping plans will still require association approval. But in the states following Maryland's lead, HOAs will no longer be allowed to categorically forbid native plants or require fully turf-grassed yards. In February, Virginia lawmakers punted their bill until 2025, but Solstice plans to keep pushing until it passes and she can turn her attention from the State House to her own home again. I have big plans. So I thought it was very cool to see an article with a former
for sure.
guest of our podcast and listener also. So I hope you're listening to this, that we gave it its due. And it is very encouraging that so many... You know, it's like that trickle effect that so many people, with all the hard work and the trouble and the stress and everything else that has gone along with it in their lives, is starting to trickle down and come to fruition. And we're starting to see these changes being made, and hopefully that snowball grows and keeps going. So and it doesn't come without the tireless sacrifice and monetary sacrifice of a lot of people.
Oh yeah,
that went through what I don't like. I've said it before. I don't know if I could have fought the fight that these people fought.
Yeah,
and it's making a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's amazing how. One, I want to say how amazing it is what Melinda has been through.
Yeah,
to get this point, and it's great to see that there's some progress there.
And you couldn't ask for a better spokesperson.
Oh yeah,
for this, you really couldn't. As far as passion and knowledge and just how she brings that point across, you can't help but to become emotional or passionate about it as well.
Yeah, but it's crazy to me how attached we are to a landscape that's relatively new.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, this is what you need to do, and like you see it on social media all the time. It's like there's the bits about like dads in the summer and with the New Balances and long socks and firing up the mower and like the envy that goes, the lawn envy that goes along. But I don't know. I feel like I've noticed more and more people. It's definitely not the majority, but more and more people who are like, "Why the hell am I doing this?"
Yeah,
like why I don't really care about that, and why am I doing it just to kind of appease everyone else around here? Like and even coming to the realization where like I know what I'm doing is not good, but they don't know what the answer is yet, and they're kind of hitting their point where many of us already are. So
now, have any of your neighbors cut their lawn yet?
Oh yeah, I think a lot of them have.
I think I've only seen like one. Our neighbors cut the backyard because they were doing an Easter egg hunt and they were just trying to leave a path for the kids. But other than that, I don't think there's very many cut yards in my development. Right now. Which was nice to see because it's been warm. I mean, we're April. I know our grass is starting to get tall.
Yep.
So we've had enough good growing degree days.
Yeah. And I'm not a big no-mow May guy. But I usually try and wait till May until doing it. It's getting a little hairy in some spots. I might have to hit earlier. I've done some of the no-mow May stuff in like certain areas, and I just haven't seen the results in the couple areas I've done. And someone actually put in our Facebook group was asking about like with no-mow May and what kind of everyone's take was on it. And Kelly Gill chimed in with a really good saying, "Oh, if you have a space where you can leave it unmowed and it's contributing, that's where it is." Where I don't like the phrasing is a lot of people are latching onto it, not mowing their lawns and thinking that it has the significant effect because there's dandelions and dead nettle and stuff that really isn't doing much. I always say it's like the Ralphie meme. It's like, I'm helping. I can't remember what scene that is in The Simpsons, but he's not really helping. So it's I think that's a great article for him.
I think both articles are great articles, and this is where you get to
really work out my vocal cords.
Oh,
nice... Oh, I thought you were talking about our next segment.
I was going to say this is where our listeners get to pick which one they like better. So on Monday, this will go up on our Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, and we'll do our typical buzz poll, and you'll get to pick the winner because...
And of course, the choice is yours.
Stay tuned for more of the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Welcome back to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
That was a vocal cord workout, though, for you. That was a long one, but it was all worth it. I didn't want to cut you off.
I had to get the warm up for this next segment.
Listener, shout out.
Your section just keeps getting longer and longer. I'm going to do mine just so I can do it. And this is someone that we've given a shout out before, and you mentioned him earlier, but wanted to give a shout out to Brad Madrinsky for being the meme master. His memes that he has been posting in our Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group have been shared
Far and wide.
Far
Yeah.
and wide, yes.
Yeah, I've seen them on other pages, and I was like, oh, I thought I just saw this in our group, and then I was like, oh, it's because it got shared,
Shared,
which
yeah.
is awesome. That's great to see. And he said he's been holding back on some of the more risque memes.
He has been. He sent me a couple, which are, and some of them are like, post it, just post it. But I appreciate the effort and the work that is going into that, and everyone. I know everyone.
When
else
he had left
appreciates
that comment, I had just heard a song that very catchy about Bradford pears, and had I not known that children listen to this and kind of what we're trying to go with. It made me giggle like I was in high school.
Yeah.
and it was I was like, oh man, if this was a different kind of podcast that was more geared on lighthearted and funny, I would be petitioning to use this as our outro song. But there's, like I said, I don't want to call them children, but there's kids that listen to this with their families.
Yes.
And I don't want to expose them to that.
No. But Brad's been doing, like, he has some that he could have posted. There's one with Post Malone that I'll have to I'll have to share with you. But we appreciate it. If you want to see firsthand what we're talking about, join our Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group, and you can join in on the fun.
Yeah. So, and I got a list here.
You do.
When I first started this, I was like, we're not going to have that many. So I'll continue this with the idea that at some point we may have too many for me to do in a single sitting. And then I would have to pick like one or two. So that I don't think we're there yet.
We're getting close.
We're getting close. So keep them coming, and then I can pick my favorites instead of just all of them. But we had KG on Spotify about our Buzz 202 episode. Like the comment that Forsythia looks like a giant threw up, which is what I agree with. And I think I was driving 15-minute ride, little story here, 15-minute ride between my house and my in-laws' house on Easter. And my wife and I are talking about Forsythia because she is into that like general aesthetic. And I was just like, I don't mean to be mean. It's just a basic B-word plant. It's everyone has one. It's like the Stanley Cup. It's like the Ugg boots. It's like the yoga pants and Lululemon. Everyone has one. And I was like, we'll count how many we pass on the way up. And I forget what the number was, but it was in a community. It was at least every third house had a Forsythia, at least one. Most of them had multiple. And it's just, people have been, I personally don't find an attractive plant. I could understand why people could find an attractive plant. But I think some of the idea of beauty in plants, but in other things, is the rarity of them as well, and that everyone has them. That's why things become fads, is because I'm the first one with a Stanley Cup, or I'm the first one with the Yeti Cup, and then all of a sudden everyone has them, and that person's already moved on to something else. I just think they're a very basic plant. I think they're easy to grow in a variety of conditions. So landscapers love them because I only need to know 5 things or 10 things instead of having to really be an expert in my trade and say, oh, this is what you really want. It's like, you're going to put this, and this, and you're good.
I get it. They grow fast. Yep. You can't kill them. You can hedge them, and it's and they're relatively, because they're so quick, you can buy them so cheap. Mm-hmm. Like I get the attraction to it in that respect, but there's a lot of other things that you can use besides that.
Yeah.
Be different.
And I think
it's okay to be
a
different.
good landscaper will steer you in that direction.
Yeah.
I think there's landscapers out there that it's for their bottom line, where it's like, hey, my guys don't need to know anything. They can screw up how they plant it because it's still going to be okay. Yeah. Like they can, when they come back for cleanups, I can hack it back.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've seen instances, I don't know with this plant in particular, but there's other plants where there's like planned obsolescence, like other things. It's like, well, I know it's going to not work for a long time, or it needs to be cleaned up. Yeah. So they're going to be calling me back because I'm putting this in. So that's one of the reasons I don't like that plant.
I told you that,
or most regular landscape plants.
Like when I worked at Star Roses, they found through like early thing. Like the reason why they focused on roses was, and this was back in like 1911 or something. Like they were like, well, people love them and are attached to them, and they're really short lived. And we find that if they have a rose bush that they like, and it dies every year, they'll rebuy it.
Yeah.
So it's a great business model because we could just keep selling it.
Yep. Next up, we had O'Dial on Spotify about the Amsonia trials. Asked for more episodes with that kind of information. One of the parts they had in that comment, which I half agree with, is that we're a lot of our listeners are the choir, and we don't need to be preached to, which I don't think is
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
We've talked about it a lot. We have a lot of folks that are on a path, multiple paths, that are all kind of going in the same direction, but they're on different places. So you have folks that are like just learning about this, that do need a little bit more of the preaching. We have people who have been are experts that have been in the restoration industry for 40 years that listen to this, and everything in between, and people who are they're doing it for homesteading, or they're doing it for wildlife, or they're doing it for all these different reasons. So we try and have a good mix. I do like having more plant-centric episodes too.
No, definitely. And that was our compromise. Not that we don't want to have more. We would love to have more, but that's where a native plant every day was kind of born, that podcast. So if you want more focused single plant episodes, there's 72 that exist, and there's going to be another 30. We still have only recorded 2 weeks worth. Yeah,
we have more to do.
We have more to do, but it's coming. It's coming.
Then we had Dina. How do you say the last name?
Look at the she tells you at the end. Look at the very end.
Boutot. Dina Boutot.
Dinah
Boutot.
Dinah Boutot.
Sorry, Dinah. I've been screwing that up. Dinah Boutot. In another Buzz episode, wholeheartedly agreed with our opinion on cats. So yeah, we can't let the dog roam free. So I was okay with cats, and loves hearing me try to pronounce their name. So hopefully someone else did that with Kyle Liebarger.
Yeah.
And said, "Oh, his last name is actually pronounced Lieberger," and then it's not. So hopefully you're not messing me up.
No, I think she's
so.
Dinah Boutot.
Light to Nations on the Deer and Native Plants Part 1 wrote that it was an awesome episode, so practical and hopeful after the first deer episode. Then we had the meat on our last episode. It was Brathwaite Seth on meat, force of nature, a little play on words with the meat. Love the episode. If I were rich instead of being good looking, or if I were rich instead of good looking, my life goal would be to what Rome Ranch is doing. So I thought that was a pretty good one too. Next to Zero on Spotify, also on that episode, thought it was fantastic, and was a fan of Epic Bars, so liked hearing about the founders'
I just
transition.
bought some. They're coming today.
Yeah.
They're delivering today, so
Okay,
I'm going to
cool.
bring one in for you tomorrow.
Indie Bug
I went with Buffalo Bacon Cranberry?
I think that's what you told me yesterday.
Buffalo Bacon, Bison Bacon Cranberry. All right.
And then Indie Bug on Apple on that same episode said it was an awesome interview and wish for everyone in America to hear the podcast episode. So, yeah. Awesome. I thought that was a pretty big compliment. And then,
I do too.
Then we had
some great feedback on that episode. We really did.
Yeah. Then we had Joey Jojo Senior Shabadoo. Said who's one of our Canadian listeners. This is probably one of the bigger compliments I think we've received. Said that we're the premier native plant podcast in North America. There's other great shows like In Defense of Plants, Crime Pays, Cultivating Place. But Tom and Fran are the top of the heap at the moment for me. Great job, guys. So
that's such a wonderful compliment. Thank you.
We're going back into our history. Part of our concept was you had the Native Plant podcast. You had in Defense of Plants. Some of these ones that were a little bit more scientific feeling. I don't want to call them stuffier, but you had to. There was a knowledge gap you needed to surpass before you could enter the room and like I would listen to In Defense of Plants sometimes. Like I have no idea what they're talking about, and this is me with degrees in this and worked in the industry, and I'm like, I'm lost. So we wanted to provide something that was a little bit more, somewhere in between entry level to intermediate, dabble in expert from here and there, but kind of bring it down to a level where people could understand. Because we saw so many folks that wanted to engage with native plants, but weren't there yet. And kind of, I don't want to say,
didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah, didn't feel comfortable with it. And again, highlight how you don't have to be a plant person necessarily to love native plants. You can love them for different reasons, whether it's for food or wildlife or insects or butterflies, birds, all these different things. It's the same path, different end goals, different reason to get on the path, but you're going the same direction.
We wanted it to be all accepting too.
Yeah.
Like we could edit this like crazy and cut out all of our mistakes, make sure we pronounce everyone's name properly or all the plants. Mm-hmm. We have a native plant every day that's going to air where we mispronounce a botanical name the entire episode. I don't know that we got it right the whole time.
I don't remember which one that was.
I don't want to say.
I thought I was saying it right, Fran.
I don't know.
I think I said a plant name before.
Oh, come on. I think I said it 10 different ways throughout the course of the episode. So, but it's okay to make a mistake.
Yeah.
Those are learning moments, and we want this to be a learning moment on all fronts. We're like the Mr. Rogers of the plant podcast world.
But no, we really love this kind of feedback because it not only does it pump up our egos and gives us big heads, but it also kind of gives us a little bit of sense of direction when we get good feedback. It's okay, we need to do more of this kind of stuff. When you get some criticisms, it kind of helps you shape where you're either okay, well, I'm going to defend this and say this is why, and maybe it's not perfect for everyone, or it can help redirect so we make sure we're going in the right direction.
And we've made plenty of changes over the course of 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
So we do listen. Some things, like Tom said, we defend our choices on it because it's part of your vision and you want to kind of stay true to your vision. But we've changed a lot of things to make it friendlier.
Yeah. So well, thank you everyone for all the comments. Like I said, we aren't there yet where I'm going to have to pick a favorite or two.
We're close.
If I had to pick a favorite on this one, it was definitely going to be Braithwaite Seth. About if he was rich instead of handsome. That was a good one.
Mine would have been Indie Bug or Joey Jojo.
Yeah.
Senior Shabadoo. Yeah. Which another Simpsons reference.
Yep.
We actually have we don't get these every episode, but we have 2 questions this week.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. And I want to have them answered immediately.
It's a simple question.
No, I didn't hear you. What was your question?
And in true Fran fashion, I didn't listen to either prior.
Oh, gosh.
So I don't know if it's something that we're going to be able to answer, or we're not prepared at all. But we're going to listen, and let's see if it may only be a comment, may not even be a question, but we'll check it out.
Hi, Tom and Fran. This is Jimmy in Maryland calling in again regarding invasive species legislation. On the last episode, you mentioned Virginia's new proposed law to start labeling invasive species with black and yellow signs and encouraging consumers to buy something else. First off, I want to say I'm not speaking on behalf of Maryland Native Plant Coalition here, but I'll speak to our bill and why it is the way it is, at least as it's been explained to me by more knowledgeable people. Also, I 100% support the efforts of those trying to get the Virginia bill passed, because right now it sounds like there's not even anything on the books there at all. I will say I was disappointed to hear how the Virginia bill was composed, because it's actually the approach we're now discontinuing in Maryland. We had exactly the same strategy, the exact same signs with the same colors, and it just didn't make enough of a difference. The signs can't do the amount of education needed at that point of sale for an uneducated consumer. It puts the burden of making the right decision on consumers instead of the industry, just like the Recycling System Act. And it actively permits the sale of those, of these known harmful plants by companies that are very happy to remain ignorant, or at least pretend they are. In Maryland, we thought the signage would work in 2011 when the law was first passed here. There was also some thought that the cat was out of the bag and that the new introductions wouldn't make the invasive situation worse. That has not turned out to be true, and that's why we're doing away with a tiered system. If the Maryland bill passes, and FYI, we've made it through both houses and are hoping procedural votes and signature by the governor go as expected, the regulatory process will be much faster and we can get the plants on a prohibited list where they belong. We got the broader plant growing industry group on board, mostly by giving them more time to phase out their stocks. However, we faced some non-trivial resistance from growers with, for instance, $2 million of barberry in the ground. I spoke with that particular farmer at length, and it was clear he genuinely didn't care where his plants went after they left his farm. In fact, he didn't even seem to know. Those are the folks who need to be regulated because they will simply never make the right choice on their own. Thanks, guys, and I love the show. Bye.
Some fantastic points. And it's, I couldn't agree more with that. I was looking at, I think for the Virginia, it's, you got to start somewhere. And if that's the first step, if it goes through, I would like to see, you know, I know you're dealing with it here in New Jersey. I would like to just see the list of, you can't sell these plants. You can't grow them. You can't sell them.
Yep.
You know, and that in a perfect world, I would love that. And I know the struggles that we're having here. With that.
Yeah. And I think, I love the call. And I love learning more about that stuff. And I'm trying to reflect it back to what we can do here in New Jersey. Because just a phone call I had earlier today, and it's talking about how, even though I think most nurseries are, I shouldn't say most. When I talk to nurseries around the state of New Jersey, that it seems like a lot of the folks I talk to get it and say, and they're more looking at it as an opportunity and saying, I get it. I drive up and down the highway. I see the pears. I've seen pictures of the barberry in the woods or burning bush. I've seen enough of this stuff that I know that there's a thing. It's for them. A lot of them is like, where do you draw the line? Cornus Florida, or not Cornus Florida. I said this recently too. I made the stream screw up. Cornus Cusa.
Sweeta.
So yeah, Cornus Cusa, and that's like a developing potential invasive plant in New Jersey.
You did an article on that.
I did an article on it. They don't. A lot of the nurseries, they don't go that far. Some of the hydrangeas. There's our invasive species strike team in New Jersey, which is a nonprofit group. They're saying, hey, this is something we should watch out for because we have seen it pop up enough, or at least once in a place. So now they have an eye out if they see it elsewhere. Yeah. And that raises alarm bells because while barberry and pears have been big sellers and burning bush is big sellers, you get in the hydrangeas, now you're talking. It's
just funny
like huge
because
dollars. Still,
this is what
same.
Amazes me. Like, you don't see multiflora rose for sale.
Yeah.
Like, people know, like, this is bad. And actually, this morning coming into
Purple
work.
loosestrife is another
one. You don't really see it anymore. People know. So it's just funny the pushback on certain plants. But, like, driving in today on 295, it's really easy to spot all the multiflora rose because it's already leafed out where nothing else is leafed out. So, it just brought my attention, like, oh, my Lord, like, I never noticed how much what was in these riparian strips along the highway. And it's, I don't know. It's so, and you're right, Jimmy, you're absolutely right. Some people don't care. Like I've heard people say, I'm planting dollar signs.
Yep.
You know, they're not, they're not a nurseryman in the sense that they care about the plants and what their purpose is and where they go. It's more of, this is how I make a living.
Well, that was the phone call we got today. Or that I had today, we were talking. Well, I didn't have the direct conversation with the person, but I was talking to the person. They were reflecting on the conversation they had with me, and I was saying when I talk to a lot of the nurseries in New Jersey, you have, like I said, there's plenty of them that are saying, you know, like Over the Vest Nursery, I'll give it a shout out to. They've been looking at some of these invasive plants for a long time, and they've funneled money into research programs, looking at barberry in particular, and coming up with a whole, what they call the worry-free line. So it's barberries that were bred by University of Connecticut to be sterile or nearly sterile. So I don't want to get too scientific, but it's how many berries and seeds it'll produce, where a regular barberry is in like the thousands per plant. This is something that's in like the tens or maybe like just over 100. So that's when the sterile comes in, it doesn't mean zero. Usually it means under a certain threshold. Cause even then you need to have enough breeding populations so that they can actually like pollinate, I guess, effectively. So they've been for like 25 years, they've been throwing money at that. Now in my world or in my mind personally, am I saying that was the right direction to go? Yeah, I would have said, oh, maybe, why not we find a solution that's a native plant or doesn't have some of the detrimental effects. they went and said, let's make this not have detrimental effects. So they're still they're going the right way.
Yeah.
It wasn't maybe not the way I would have went, but I think they're going like a more ecologically friendly way is their goal. There's a lot of nurseries out there that are thinking that they're seeing, hey, I'm miscanthus or something.
Yeah.
Not Overdevest. I just talked about Overdevest. Senator nurseries voluntarily gave up growing miscanthus because they were seeing how it was invasive. So they're making those choices already. And then you have others that they're getting, and a lot of these other nurseries had this too. When they first started getting the pushback on some of these species, they're like, well, I think you're making it up because I don't see it. Yeah. And then, and it's it's something that pays my bills. You have new people who are coming to that point now. Yeah. The phone call was, why you have enough members of NJNLA or Nursery Association that don't want to have this bill at all. Why are we trying to work with a group that's trying to push forth an invasive species bill versus just outright fighting it? Yeah. And it's like, well, because it's the writing's on the wall across the country. This is going to pass. So it's either it passes with our voice and our representation, and maybe we can make it a little bit friendlier to the industry, or we just let it go, and then maybe not even have a say in what's happening. So that was our argument is, and like I've mentioned before, I kind of took a step back and said, let's have the people who this affects involved. Yeah. I shouldn't be the voice of nurseries because I don't have skin in the game. So yeah, it's just, you have some nurseries that are, we talk about listeners that are on their path in native plants. Same thing with a lot of nurseries. Yeah. There's nurseries that are different places on the path, and they're still in that defense stage of like, you're telling me I'm doing something wrong, and I'm not. Yeah. And they just haven't seen it yet. And
some nurseries have gotten there with some plants. They're just not there with these plants.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because people are still buying them as well. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's, and I'm not going to say that there's not nurserymen that don't care, because there are, and they're selling the plants more than likely to people that don't care. Yeah. You know, or that are still too early in their journey to know better. Yep. And how do you get that message out? It's, you know, it's funny. I was thinking, like, the signs aren't enough. Why wouldn't you treat invasive plants almost like a cigarette? Like, you know, cigarettes are bad, but you can still buy them. But so much of that money goes into education as to why you shouldn't. Like, if you're going to sell invasive plants and they're legal to sell, maybe so much of that plant should go into a fund with commercials saying, hey, if you buy this plant, this is what you're doing. And to educate people not to do it. And eventually,
I think some of it's on some of it's on, you have what am I trying to say? The public burden of the handful of people who make those other choices. So like using like cigarettes as an example is the public burden of the healthcare system that in a roundabout way we're all paying into through insurance, where you have a handful of users who are, I don't want to say benefiting, that's not the right word, are using those resources, even though we're all paying into it. It goes with soda and sugary cereal and all kinds of stuff. No, that's true. It's but it's kind of like that is, well, you have folks that are making the right choice. Why should, but I guess in your model they aren't paying into that burden, but they're dealing with the consequences of
at some point,
invasive plants.
Because I'm thinking with cigarette companies, a lot of that stems from lawsuits. Like, at what point does someone sue and said, I had a close to pristine natural area, my neighbor planted invasives, and now it's riddled with invasives that have cost me this much for removal and time, and eventually that's going to happen.
Yeah, but I think
and that's just going to tie
really
up
long way away from that, in my mind, because, well, I shouldn't say that. Because some of those court cases have kind of happened, not necessarily with invasive, but with other environmental things. But you just have sitting in a committee hearing at our Capitol and hearing people making the laws have no clue what they were talking about in regards to what the plants are and how they're grown and the whole process. It kind of opened my eyes and say, oh, we can get really screwed really fast without having a voice. It's really one of the reasons why I'm like, oh, I need to be more involved in this on other things too. Is you have folks, and it's just plant blindness is one part. It's a different kind of industry, but it was like a little comment at the end of this hearing threw off an entire like months and months of working together on something, and it was just the people who were there to digest that information just didn't have enough background knowledge to process it properly, I guess, in my mind.
Wow.
So,
all right,
we have another call.
We have another call.
Great. Thank you for the call, Jimmy, because that got us moving on stuff.
Hi, it's Susie from upstate New York. I love your podcast and always learn so much. Here's my question. I think the idea of a chip drop is great. How do you know the chips are safe? Someone mentioned asking to make sure there weren't black walnut chips in the mix. And then there's tree diseases around, like the maples have something, there's oak wilts, etc. I don't want to bring a problem to my yard. Thanks.
That's a good question.
Yeah. It's something else I've seen someone recently pose that question, I think on Facebook. Maybe it was you, Susie. But
like I know this was something that your dad was actually just complaining about recently with chips that he had gotten for a project, and he was like, half of them are junk. Like, it's they can be good, but I agree. Like if you're just going to a tree removal company saying I want chips, they're gonna bring whatever chips they have that day, and you're right, it could be something that's diseased or sick. You just have to be careful, because a lot of times they'll give that away for free because they're just looking for a place to be able to dump it. I think you have to go someone it's not an end product or a byproduct, that they're actually making it they're making chips for sale, and then ask those questions. Like,
that's the concept of chip drop, which is I think website app, I forget what it is connecting the tree folks, the tree people, with people who are willing to take the trip, and it's a pretty fast transaction. And typically it is free. I just don't know how you control. You don't have the control doing it that way.
Yeah. So it's great in concept. I agree. Like, it's a fantastic theory, but the questions that you're posing are really good questions.
Yeah. And I'm not sure. A lot of diseases are bacterial or fungal. And to go through a chipper, I would assume doesn't get rid of them. They aren't treated in some way.
That would be my assumption.
Yeah. But
which marks a whole nother question for me that I'd never thought of. If you're putting diseased trees through your chipper, say they're fungal or bacterial, you're not necessarily washing that chipper out all the time. So even something that wasn't diseased, can you pass it on that way? Or could the chips carry it through the chipper?
Yeah. I don't know. Oh, man. Susie, you made us ask more questions than we're answering here.
And I'm sure there's an answer for that. I just don't know. But it's, if it's someone that you can trust, that you can have the conversation with, that makes it a whole different story. If you're just getting it randomly, you're at the mercy of the person providing them, to be honest.
That's even with the walnut idea. I don't know what I'd think is that jug loan still going to be an issue with a chip tree? Because I know from working on, I don't think this is the jug loan, from working on like walnut live edge slabs, you gotta wear a respirator and goggles or it'll like screw you up. I was like sick because I didn't do that the one day, just from breathing in the dust. For like a couple days, I got pretty sick when I did that, and that was but I don't know if that was the jug loan or not. I'm just like using anecdotal stuff, so I have no clue. I would assume it would probably dissipate over time. In chip tree.
I'm just looking. Like, I just did a really quick like Washington, is it Washington State or University of Washington was saying in their many diseased Port Orford cedar trees are disposed of by chipping, and mulch made from these chips can spread disease to healthy plants. So, and then, but there's a lot of articles. I know Washington State University has myths about wood chips. Let's see.
I'm looking up. The walnut sawdust can cause irritation and poisoning because of the juglone.
Because it says
so. There present?
Yeah, it says like verticillium survive on uncomposted wood chips. So if you're getting fresh wood chips, like, you could spread.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
So you're already one step ahead of the game because you're thinking about that. A lot of people haven't even thought about that. But if I would try to partner maybe with a local tree company that you trust, because I'll be honest, some of these tree companies, they don't all contain certified arborists that can identify tree disease. They're just coming in saying this is a dead tree and I'm going to remove it without really identifying. It's not their job to identify why it died, just that they're taking it down. So partner with someone, ask some questions, partner with someone that you trust.
And I know we're not a financial podcast, but if I'm hearing this, I'm going to short chip drop. I do not take our financial advice. That SEC is going to be knocking on our door pretty soon.
But that's another fantastic question.
I love questions that make us ask more questions,
and that's definitely one of them. Yeah. So we just going ahead, looking at the time, we're pretty far into this. And I noticed for topic you did write Force of Nature, which was last week's episode with Taylor Collins. So what were you thinking? What was
I just wanted to kind of talk about that episode and reflect on it a little bit. Because Taylor, having listened to a lot of his podcasts,
such a wonderful
kind of knowing
episode.
So what to expect going in is he's up there with those kind of speakers. Like
Dwayne Estes.
When I listen to Dwayne Estes, and it's like, okay, I feel like empowered and I'm blanking on the word. When you really like have to get up and do something. Yeah. Like I'm like, I need to go and do this now. Listening to those kind of folks. That you don't always get from
you don't and
person.
And we knew just from the conversation, like we ended the Zoom call and Tom and I just looked at each other and just were like, wow, that was a really good episode. And you know, I purposefully went into that, and that could go either way. I went into it kind of blind. Like we had our list of questions and I hadn't listened to the podcast and didn't really know a lot about Taylor, and I was just floored with what he had to say. And you know, that day I was browsing on the website to place an order. You know, I just bought some Epic bars, even though it's not his company anymore. I wanted to see what the buzz was about, and it made me think about a lot of things. You know, we talked about at the end of that episode, like there's a lot of things you'll spend good money on. Like why not? Why isn't food one of those? That's what powers us, what we put in our bodies. Why wouldn't you want the best for yourself? Now, money's an object. I get that. Like you can't, you know, even looking at these things, I'm like, I can't afford to eat like this every day.
Yeah.
You know, but what can I do to bridge that gap? What are some of the conversations that my wife and I were having?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a bunch of different podcasts and documentaries and that kind of stuff I've watched that kind of like got me into that mindset. I've talked about it on here too, where I always enjoyed hunting, and I listened to a lot of hunting podcasts to like make me a better hunter. And then it wasn't until like later I was like, wait, I'm working native plants. This is one of my hobbies, and I'm like, they're really on the same path. And then the same thing happened with agriculture. And food and all that kind of stuff. It's like, man, this is really on the same path. It's very similar. So that's how I but there was one of the concepts that I really liked and I can't remember where I heard it, but it was saying how we need to shift from a diet where it's quantity and saying, I want to go to a restaurant and get the 16-ounce steak, or go to the store and I'm going to go to Walmart and I'm going to get this giant ribeye, right? To I'd rather have something that's smaller and more flavorful, and way more packed with nutrients. because the model we're on right now is they want its weight, and it's basically how much product can I actually get out at the lowest price. And we kind of need to shift in this model where it's like I want smaller, more nutrient dense, more flavorful, more expensive. But the Taylor's model is doing that in a sense. But the one thing I wanted to say at that episode too that I forgot at the very end is as we were running a little short on time is
we didn't even I like all kidding aside. We asked four of the questions that we had prepared.
But one of the things I want to say is with his example of if you can do it yourself, whether that's hunting or, in my mind, if you're able to raise the animals yourself, it gives you a lot more perspective in what goes into it. And you know exactly what that diet was. Yeah. And then 2 is, forming a relationship with a farmer who's doing it for you close by. And that's something I've really embraced lately is, man, I have a handful, and this isn't available to everyone, but I have a handful of farmers that I can go to that are raising their own beef cattle, chickens, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, do I want to go to the grocery store and buy a steak, or would I rather go and pay a little more, but talk to my friend Brian for an hour, and his daughters are playing with my son, and you start to form a relationship. And I'm looking at the steers or animals that are going to be processed in the next load, and seeing what they're eating, and like you can have a conversation with all that. It's closer than you think. To find that. This is a real example because I was hanging out with my friend Brian, and my son was playing with his daughters, and he had his store open up for beef pickups that day, and it's just a chain of people coming in. And each single person, he's taking the time and talking to them, asking them how their day is, and like they can ask him questions. He really opens his door to those folks to have that conversation. And it's not just Brian. So Brian is plays Three Willows Farm in Pemberton, New Jersey. Okay. So if you're in New Jersey, you can visit there. You can also check out Clover Valley Farms is not too far away from us too. They do American Wagyu. You have Christiane from A Native Plant Every Day. Her family is Good Enough Farms. They do American Wagyu as well. And then one other I'll throw out there is a guy, Alan Summerford, who I may have mentioned here before. And I'm trying to look up the name of his farm. He's down in Alabama, and you can order his stuff online. And, what's his farm's name? He's working with Land and Legacy now. He works with Kyle Leibarger. He's from the same town as Kyle Leibarger. I'm on his Facebook page, but I don't see what his farm's name is. But I'll keep looking it up. But that was what really just want to reflect on that. I know at parts it gets a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not like the touchy-feely guy. And parts of it get a little. I'm like, I want to know the science too, but I think he does a great job of blending.
Very cool.
Those aspects. Taylor did so. Yeah.
Awesome. No, it was a fantastic one. Like we left the office thinking, wow, we can't wait for this to go out tomorrow. Like that's how pumped we are. I actually listened to it again. And we were telling our coworkers, like, you have to listen to this one. Like if you're going to listen to any episode, this was a great one to listen to. And it was very motivational, to say the least. And one of those ones where you just start it kickstarts you to think a different way.
Yeah.
And that's what I liked about it.
Yeah, for sure.
So take it or leave it. Did you look by any chance to see what I wrote?
I didn't, so I'll look right now.
Nature commodification. Now, I just thought I'd give a couple definitions of that because I've been seeing some research on this. The commodification of nature is an area of research within critical environmental studies that is concerned with the ways in which natural entities and processes are made exchangeable through the market with the implications thereof. That's the Wikipedia. The Wiley Online Library says the commodification of nature refers to the process of incorporating biophysical entities and or information about them into economic systems for the purpose of exchanging the goods or service for profit. So there's a lot of research saying, what what is this doing? Like Science Direct has one, a review in social sciences. Let's see, just it says commodification in nature through privatization, marketization, monetary valuation, and other associated processes become a central topic in social sciences to examine the conditions and effects of the economic approaches for supporting conservation policies all around the world. So, conserving for the sake of monetary value, and privatization of some of these natural areas to keep them natural. Like I would imagine you could point in like the wood industry or paper industry into that.
Privatization of natural areas, I'm pretty heavily against. And that's
it
something
is being managed, but managed in a way that's good for like it can be both. I mean, when we had, I'm trying to remember our guest from Xerxes out in the West Coast who came from a family,
where they
was in
were
the timber industry, but they were doing things differently.
Yeah, well, those are typically leases and not ownership. But I know one of the big things that's happening more in the western part of the country is they're trying to, and I don't want to necessarily put party lines on this, but it is party lines on it. You have Republican representatives that are trying to sell off public lands in the western part of the U.S. to private organizations. Most of the time, they're not trying to manage it for nature.
And one of the points of this abstract, again, this was from Science Direct, was that one of the issues was over the past 15 years with commodification, we've seen more fragmentation than consolidation of the field. So instead of bringing all these natural resources together, it's breaking them up into smaller specifics. So for privatization, I don't, in one respect, you have this natural land that's being managed, but it's being managed for a certain purpose, not what's best for the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that some of the management practice don't help the ecosystem. I'm just saying it's being managed in a way that's if you're managing anything, it doesn't make it natural. I was going to say unnatural, but I guess that's an unfair assessment for me to say that. But I don't know how I feel about it. And it's a phrase I hadn't been aware of until I saw the study. And I just thought I'd throw it at you to see if you knew any more about it than I did.
Not a ton.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that they're like what I mentioned is going on is something that's happening with a lot of dissent. There's not a lot of people that I know that are on board with it, but at least that's in the circles I'm running in. People don't like it. Right. I think that's some of what will get the general public on board is knowing the financial benefits of. We talked a lot about invasive plants, and invasive plants are costing like taxpayers billions of dollars nationally to take care of in all different ways. And that's, in all realistically, is probably an underestimate because there's things that they're missing that I would assume that that it affects in different ways.
Well, let me ask you a question. I'm trying to figure a way to put this. Like, say it's a botanical garden with natural areas. It's not necessarily, that's a nonprofit. That's not necessarily a for-profit. Because I was going to say, those are being managed in a proper way that you would agree with, that this is a good thing. Because it's stewardship in the best possible sense. I think it's more, for what you're extracting from it. Yeah. I would imagine. It's a very, I'll have to share the study with you. It's a very lengthy study.
I'd be interested in seeing that.
But it's, I thought it was an interesting concept that I hadn't thought of, nature being a commodity, which it is for the most part, whether, to a certain extent for some of these companies with how it's being managed. But you want to come back to this one at a later date?
I guess I really just don't know enough about it.
Okay. All right.
My instinct says I'd lean away from it, but
I don't know enough about it either, and I don't think there is a lot known about it. It's more more research coming all the time about this. So maybe it's something that we can look into to kind of figure out what our thoughts and learn a little bit more about it. If you're a listener and you know more about this, feel free to chime in on the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group. Leave us a post. I love that there's so much follow-up for some of our conversations that get started in the Facebook group. Amanda Crook, recent guest, actually followed up on the episode that we have when we were talking about skunk cabbage tincture and some other things of why it wouldn't say what its use was, or is this poisonous, is it not poisonous, and she had some great explanations for that. So make sure you go to the Facebook group for that as well. So what do you think, Tom? I'm just looking at the time. We've talked for a good hour and a half.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, we should probably wrap this up.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
What I will throw out there is Alan Summerford Farm is if you go to beefforyou.org, you can, I don't know if you can order it directly like online, but if you're in that area, you should be able to get something from him. So, all right, that sounds awesome. But he, in particular, he is using native plants as rangeland for his cattle. That's awesome. He's working with Native Habitat Project and another organization, Land and Legacy, doing controlled burns. Like, he's doing it the right way, trying to create quail habitat and better deer habitat and all that. Really nice guy too. I got to meet him in Nashville, not this past February, the February before. So
very cool, very cool, awesome.
All right, well, we do the secret at the very, very end. That's
yes.
Right. So you got to keep listening if you want to win this book.
Keep listening.
So, all right. Well, thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Buzz. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Native Plants Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
We need to change that. Like, every time I'm like, we say thank you twice in like 3 sentences.
Yep.
I got to figure a good way to.
I know. Yeah. We've been talking about it for a while.
RJ Comer, thank you. There's another thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for our Buzz Intro theme music. Wouldn't be the same without you. Make sure you stream or buy RJ's music wherever you consume music. He also has incredible Americana playlists on Pandora. Make sure you check those out as well. Dave Bennett, thank you for our Native Plant Anthem. You can follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Native Plants _Healthy Planet, and also YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. Don't forget about the question and comment line. We love the questions that we got today. We love all the questions and comments that we get. You can call us also at 215-346-6189. I will repeat, 215-346-6189. Ask a question or leave a comment. If we, or I shouldn't say if, we will do our best to play your question or comment on a future episode of The Buzz. And thank you to all the members of the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group. It's been some incredible conversations that I just love watching going on, and it's always a bright spot of my day when I kind of scroll through that.
Yeah, for sure. You can buy Native Plants Healthy Planet merch at our website, www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. There's a link right at the top. We still have to put our new logo on some shirts and get them up there. It's going to happen.
It will happen.
At some point. And we don't keep any of the profits. They're going to nonprofits that have made an impact on us, that we say, hey, this is something that could help you guys out. So, and you can also listen to our podcast really wherever you listen now, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podbean, wherever you're listening. Keep doing it there unless you feel like changing up your provider. And wherever you're listening, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. That goes a long way. Make sure you hit subscribe. And if you do a little write-up with your 5-star review or leave a comment on Spotify, I'll give you a shout-out on our Buzz episodes. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right, you ready to give away another book?
Yes, let's give away another book.
I'm ready.
I have the wheel pulled up, and I'm going to hit the button in 3, 2, 1.
All right. Do you
and the winner is,
the
I don't know who this is, but I feel like they might have won something before.
Oh, really?
At least I remember seeing the
And we did say that's
the name.
Like
that's
every
okay.
contest, you're not excluded if you've already won.
Maybe I'm mistaken, but it's B Hammy 85.
I don't think so.
B Hammy 85.
HAMMIE
85.
All right. Awesome. Now we have to find out where that one was from too. So B Hammy 85, you've also won a copy of Leah Rampey's Earth and Soul.
Yeah.
Beautifully autographed. And you just have to reach out to us at info@nativeplantshealthyplanet.com and just let us know who you are and kind of give us a little proof of how we know it's really you, and we'll mail the book right out to you. Awesome. So you have 2 weeks. If we haven't heard back from you by episode 206, we will spin the wheel again.
Yep.
So
awesome. Right. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. With that, I'm Tom. I've been playing with the wheel.
And I am Fran. Thank you, everyone. Coming up next week, we have another guest. We're still trying to finalize that episode, so we'll get that done. And we'll see you next time. Until then, keep it native.
Woods, wetlands, and dales grows a bounty of beauty that never fails. Our native plants, so diverse and so rare, treasures of our land beyond compare. From the threads below, soaring oaks above, each plant has a place, each plant is love. Monarch caterpillars launch milk, wheat so tall, bees buzz about, sipping nectar from all. Oh, native plants, how you grace this land. In your diversity, we will take a stand. To preserve our generations to come, and beauty and potency second to none. To protect and preserve the earth, to restore the native plant movement you just can't ignore.
Goldenrod, asters, and flowers galore. Monarch is so stunning, can't help but adore. Their colors, their fragrance, a feast for the eyes. Their value to wildlife, no need to disguise.
Native plants, how you grace this land. In your diversity, we will take a stand.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.